Tune into ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where we explore ESG with impact. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to ESG Matters with Risk Insights, and Happy New Year to all. I'm your host, Anushka Bogdanov, and I wish you a fabulous 2024. Most of us create New Year resolutions, which we try to keep for the rest of the year. Today, I would like you to consider a New Year resolution: reduce your carbon footprint. We can achieve this resolution by changing the way we consume, our buying power, and investing in sustainable companies and products, recycling, and becoming part of a circular economy. As I continue to follow world events and using various sources from Bloomberg to Financial Times and other peer reviewed work, as well as other news feeds, climate change and the risk for the planet is imminent based on empirical data. Now, the world that we know has been changing. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which was established in 1988 to collect and assess evidence on climate change, has been showing scientifically that most of the planet's ice cover would melt by the end of the century and has a high probability to trigger a cascade of irreversible consequences, which include flooding that is strong enough to engulf entire cities. So I believe that we are at an inflection point to make changes in the way we live and to consciously change the way we consume to reduce the risk of climate change, which continues to take center stage in the world. It is the largest risk we face as humanity. Our climate is changing drastically, and countries and leadership that are not preparing their people, infrastructure, and economies will most severely be impacted. Scientists believe preliminary figures show that the past 12 months to be the hottest in 125,000 years. Now, recently I was posting ESG Matters podcast on my social media WhatsApp to a senior group of colleagues from mostly European and American companies. And I got feedback that this podcast is self promoting and that ESG is politically sensitive to some people in the US and Europe. There is no self promoting here. As much as Africa is an important audience for Risk Insights, we believe that we live in a world that is interconnected, and climate risk that is arising will have major impact on societies and future generations across the globe, creating no boundaries on this risk. So I'm reiterating ESG matters to Risk Insights, and data and information is key for leadership to create resilience in companies, households, and in their countries. So let me paint the bigger picture of climate events of 2023 to date. And why do I say that we are interconnected and this risk has no boundaries? Now, countries across the globe have always experienced catastrophic events in early years. But hear this podcast on the severity and the first time events as I take you through 2023. The first weeks of 2023 saw flooding and mudslides and power outages in California. Iowa saw its first tornado in more than 50 years in January last year. In New Zealand, as torrential rainfall brought flash flooding and landslides to Auckland, and Western Australia, the tropical cyclone Ellie brought a year's worth of rain in just a few days. That's the beginning of 2023 January. February, Cyclone Freddy formed in the southern Indian Ocean near Australia. This became the most long lasting and deadly storms on record. It took until the middle of March before it finally dissipated, leaving behind a trail of destruction. This destruction included impacting on Malawi, where intense rain was brought through flash flooding, which included also landfalls in Madagascar and Mozambique, killing many people and damaging thousands of buildings, infrastructure, and farmland. The storm recorded more energy over its lifespan than the whole of a typical US hurricane season. So look at this impact from Australia, taking it right through to Africa. March. Some of Spain experienced their driest March in 20 years, officially bringing the country into a long term drought, increasing concerns about the nation's water reserves. Drinking water fell to its lowest levels since the 1990s. Spain's first major wildfire of the year forced hundreds of villagers to leave their animals behind and leave their homes. Torrential rain brought surging waters and flash flooding to some of the regions in Turkey. April. Many parts of Europe felt more like July as the heat wave that broke records over the continent. A heat dome from northern Africa to the Iberian Peninsula saw mercury climb to around 40 degrees Celsius. Spain recorded its hottest ever April temperature, reaching 38.8 degrees, while there was blistering heat in Portugal. Many were killed in tornadoes that plowed through the US South and Midwest. May. Hundreds of people were killed or were missing because of Cyclone Mocha, which created a landfall in Myanmar as well as on the coast of Bangladesh. In the DRC, people were killed because of a flash flood in one of the country's most deadliest natural disasters. There was flooding and landslides that killed people in and displaced people in Rwanda as well as in Uganda. June. Fires which started burning in April and May escalated further in June, what became the worst wildfire season in the Canadian history. So, with drier conditions than normal, smoke from Canadian fires drifted into the US, forcing flights to be grounded and delayed and postponing baseball games. Haiti was hit by heavy rain, strong winds, and floods, as well as a landslide. And bear in mind, everything that I have just spoken about has happened in the last 6 months of 2023. July was an interesting month for 2023 and a very scary month for the world because temperatures climbed over 40 degrees across Europe. And the month was seen as one of the hottest months on record because we found the Antarctic sea ice also dropped to lows not seen since records began in 1979. July was also seen as the hottest 3 week period ever recorded, the hottest 3 days on record, and the highest ever ocean temperature for the time of the year. The month became the hottest month on record. Southern Europe really struggled through these high temperatures, and we found that there were wildfires in Canada and Greece, which continue to impact the environment as well as people. The Copernicus heat sensing satellite detected that land surface also exceeded 45 degrees Celsius across much of Italy. A southern European heat wave also saw Spain, France, Greece, Turkey, Kosovo, and Italy struggling with these intense conditions. The temperatures in Spain also increased to around 45 degrees, while Sicily and Sardinia continue to experience temperatures around 50 degrees Celsius. Forest fires took hold across the continent, including Greece, Turkey, Croatia, Portugal, and Italy. Some of you would remember how Greece had started evacuating seaside communities where hundreds of children that were evacuated from the summer camps in the west of Athens. While this was happening, we also found that Philippines had a typhoon where many people were killed because a boat overturned. There was record monsoon showers which killed lots of people also across parts of northern India and neighboring Myanmar, which was impacted by heavy flooding and intense rain. Rainfall was excessive in Pakistan. The country's meteorological service said that 70% of it was above average, where July had also seen heavy heat waves in South America. And Japan also experienced landslides and flooding amid torrential rain. In China, there was torrid heat, which also impacted the entire country, which forced the local officials to ask residents to start curbing the usage of electricity. New York and Pennsylvania also had heavy rainstorms during the month of July. There was also a dangerous heat wave that affected over 200 million people in eastern United States, where Arizona and Phoenix saw the mercury levels climb up to 43 degrees Celsius for 31 days consecutively. These statistics are extremely alarming. So if you look at August, and if we talk through that, hundreds of people also went missing because of wildfires in Hawaii. Storm Hillary also approached the Mexican coast, which headed to the US and brought California its first tropical storm in 84 years. During the month of September, we saw that Storm Daniel caused catastrophic flooding in Libya, where it also impacted the Mediterranean Sea as well as Africa. So, Turkey, Bulgaria, as well as Greece were impacted. And we found that there were quite a number of communities in Africa that were impacted, and a bridge that collapsed in Bulgaria. In October, Storm Babette brought extreme conditions, also with torrential rain to the northern and western Europe, causing over 300 flood warnings. The storm brought chaos to other parts of Europe, which affected Germany and also caused water surges that were not seen in more than 100 years in Denmark, and also homes and damaged trees in Norway, and also caused the collapse of a ceiling of a terminal building at an airport in Portugal. While all of this was happening in the month of October, we also found that in Brazil, there was record breaking high temperatures in the Amazon. So the temperature in the Amazon reached around 39 degrees, which makes it extremely difficult for wildlife to survive. So experts are also warning that the Amazon drought shows that the region is becoming drier. One of the tributaries, which is called Rio Negro, a tributary of the Amazon River, fell to its lowest levels in 121 years. So, experts are extremely concerned about the future of the Amazon, highlighting how it currently absorbs the planet's carbon. And if too many trees die or rot, it will become extremely difficult for the planet because the Amazon will become a net emitter of carbon, which will accelerate climate change. This tells us again how important it is for us to reduce our carbon emissions and to think about what we are doing to the planet to make it a better place for us all. During the month of October, we also saw that Kenya and Somalia and Ethiopia had seasonal rains which created massive flooding and landslides. November also saw a major storm that hit the UK, with the Channel Islands and parts of Europe bringing torrential rain and flooding and terrible winds. And Storm Kieran in southern Britain was comparable in severity to the Great Storm of October in 1987. The tornado in Jersey during the storm was likely to have been the strongest in the British Isles for almost 70 years. The storm made its way through to countries such as Germany, Italy, and Belgium. In Western Australia, the emergency services tackled bushfires amid a rare spring heat wave, which caused temperatures to reach around 40 degrees. In Sao Paulo, in Brazil, temperatures rose to 37.7 degrees, which was one of the highest figures for a day in November in the city since 1943. So the heat index, with the combination of heat and humidity, reached a high of 58.5 degrees Celsius in Rio de Janeiro. The Brazilian Pantanal, which is the world's largest tropical wetlands, also suffered wildfires, which is also very, very sad and very, very important for us in terms of what impact it would have on climate change. Coming to December, floods and landslides in northern Tanzania killed many people following torrential rain and left a trail of destruction and disaster for infrastructure and submerged many towns in East Africa, displacing hundreds of thousands of people. Atmospheric river also brought heavy rain, flooding, and warm winter temperatures to the Pacific Northwest. Daily rainfall records were broken in Seattle after the city received 1.5 inches of rain. There was also record breaking heat that hit parts of Australia. The temperature rose to about 43.5 degrees at the Sydney airport, the highest recorded temperature at the same station since their recording in 1929. Southern parts of Australia then received more than 2 months of rainfall in less than 24 hours, which eased the heat but caused flooding in the northern parts of Australia. Several towns around the Great Barrier Reef were cut off by conditions that were linked to the tropical cyclone Jasper. So, these conditions are extremely important to know what is going on around the world in terms of climate change. Spain experienced also during December one of its warmest winter temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius, which endangered the winter sports season. It was one of the warmest masses of air to have ever overflown in Spain at this point in December. In the UK, over 100 properties were evacuated and a major incident declared after an intense tornado damaged homes in the Greater Manchester days after Christmas. The conditions came after the wake of Storm Gerard, which wreaked havoc in Scotland and England. We also have currently the floods in Britain, where more than 100 flood warnings have been issued this week, including a flood warning on River Thames, southwest of London. The country also is bracing itself for more snow with minus 10-degree cold snap. In South Africa, we've had on Christmas Eve devastating floods in Ladysmith, which claimed many lives as well as caused massive destruction. On the 1st of January, Japan had one of the worst earthquakes or most deadliest earthquakes that it experienced at 7.6 on the Richter scale. This podcast is meant to give you an overview of the level of destruction we face if we don't act together, and we don't act now. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that climate change is here. It's terrifying, but it's just the beginning. The only surprise is the speed of change. So let our New Year resolution be to act now and to do our part to reduce the risk of climate change. How do we do this? We need to disclose as companies, we need to track, and as individuals, we need to have behavioral change. And this is what we can do to play our part. So let's be change makers together for future generations. Let's be responsible. I'm Anushka Bogdanov, and join me next week as we explore new opportunities for economies to transition to the low carbon environment. Stay true, stay good, and I look forward to your thoughts and comments, your likes and shares. So, ciao for now.